Hello and welcome to another video brought to you by RouTube. In this video, I will explore finding the midpoint and the distance between 2 points which students will begin to learn about in Year 9 Maths. Just a couple of learning objectives for this video. The first one is to find the midpoint of a line segment using the relevant formula. And the second objective is to find the distance between 2 points, once again using the relevant formula. So let's begin by having a look at the midpoint of a line segment. So what is it? So the midpoint is halfway between the endpoints of a line segment. The coordinates of the midpoint, which we denote using a capital M, can be found by averaging the X and Y coordinates of the endpoints. Essentially what that means is we need to apply the following formula to find the coordinates of the midpoint. Okay, so here we've got x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and we'll go into that in a little bit more deeply. And we've got y1 plus y2 over 2. So using that formula will actually give us the coordinates of the midpoint. All right, let's have a go at finding the midpoint. So find the midpoint of the line segment joining 3 and 9, so that's the first point, and -5 and 5. So in the top right-hand corner, I've just put the formula that we're going to use that was on the previous section, which will help us find the midpoint between these 2 points. So what we need to do is we're going to start with labeling the points as x1, x2, and y1 and y2. Now, it doesn't matter which point you say comes first, so whether this one comes first or this one comes first, it makes no difference whatsoever, but it's really important that you label the values correctly. Okay, so we know the x always comes before y, so that means that our 3 is going to be x1, and that means that the 9 is going to be y1. And that means that the -5 is going to be x2. It's essentially the second x coordinate. And then we have y2. Okay, so that's the first step. Then what you can do is then we write our formula, and then we substitute the values into that formula. Okay, so there we've got our formula written down. Now we just need to substitute. So x1 we know is 3. And then we're now going to add the x2 value, which is -5. So please be careful with the positive and the negative, which we'll deal with in a second. And that's going to be over 2. Now don't forget your brackets because it is the actual coordinates of a midpoint. Okay, and then the second one, y1 is going to be 9. And then we're going to add y2, which is 5. And that's all over 2, and then we close our bracket. So now what we can do, you can do this in sort of 2 steps if you like, or you can just use the calculator to actually assist you. So here we've got 3 plus -5. That's essentially the positive and the negative will just become a negative. So it becomes 3 minus 5 over 2. And that one becomes 14 over 2. And we can actually do that step in one. So we know that 3 minus 5, use your calculator if you need to, should give us -2. Okay, so we can just do that in all in one step. So the midpoint should give us -2 divided by +2 should give us -1. And then 14 divided by 2 should give us 7. So the coordinates of the midpoint that joins those 2 coordinate points is -1 and 7. So now we'll turn our attention to finding the distance between 2 points. So the distance between 2 points on a Cartesian plane is calculated using Pythagoras' theorem applied to a right-angled triangle. In simpler terms, we can just apply this formula, which is called the distance formula, and that will actually help us to work out the value or the distance between 2 points. So we've got a big square root that you can clearly see. Then in the brackets, we've got x2 minus x1 all squared, plus y2 minus y1 all squared again. So it's as simple as labeling the values like we did for the midpoint, and then plugging them straight into the formula using your calculator, and then rounding according to the question. So once you have the formula, things become a lot easier for you. All right, let's finish off the video by having a look at a distance between 2 points example. So like I did with the midpoint example, I've got the distance formula in the top right-hand corner, just as a bit of a point of reference for you to refer to. So here we go. Find the distance between the points 6 and 1 and 12 and 3 correct to 3 decimal places. So I'm just going to highlight that so we don't forget to round accordingly. So we need to round to 3 decimal places once we get the specific value. So like we did for the midpoint, let's write down the actual formula and then substitute the values into that formula. Okay, so now that we have written the formula, let's go ahead and label our values. So we now have our first coordinate point, 6 and 1, and the second one, 12 and 3. Now again, it doesn't matter which one you label first, which one you label second. Okay, so just like the midpoint, it makes no difference which one you label first and which one you label second. Okay, let's just go with the first one, working left to right. So 6 and 1 is going to be our first coordinate point. So we know that x comes before y, so therefore 6 is going to be x1. That means 1 is going to be y1. Therefore 12 is going to be x2 and 3 is going to be y2. So let's go ahead and substitute all of our values into that red formula. All right, now that we've substituted the values in, so we substituted x1, y1, x2, and y2. Now this one is a little bit more straightforward because there's no negatives, okay? But just be careful if there are negative coordinate points, just be careful with the negative and negative and negative and positive, all right? But in this case, all the coordinates are positive, so we don't need to worry about that. Now from here, we can just chuck it straight in the calculator. Whether you have a CAS calculator or whether you have a scientific calculator, you should receive the same answer either way. Whether you do it this way. So essentially what we do, put it straight in the calculator, which will give us an answer that looks like this. So we have 6.324, and so on. Now, what I highlighted in yellow, we needed to round to 3 decimal places. So we've got our third digit, and then the digit after ours, I'll just circle it in red, tells us what we do with the underlined digit. Okay, because the circled digit is 5 or above, the underlined digit goes up. Okay, so therefore our answer should be 6.32, and then it's going to be 5 units. Okay, whenever we're talking about the Cartesian plane, it's always in units. Okay, so the distance between those 2 points is 6.325 units. Thanks again for tuning into another RouTube video. If you learned a thing or two about distance between 2 points or the midpoint, or you're just feeling very generous, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll catch you next time.